the fall of 1987, Robert Baltovich met raven-haired beauty Elizabeth Bain in a class at the University of Toronto Scarborough campus. Robert and Elizabeth's relationship began on a rocky note as Robert claimed that she strung him along all term but then chose someone else at the end. Eventually, in 1989, the couple began dating. In the course of time, in April of 1990, Robert, 24, graduated with a degree in history and psychology and was soon working a summer job at the university. Meanwhile, 22-year-old Elizabeth was taking summer courses towards her sociology and psychology degree. All was going well for Robert. He had plans for graduate school, was deeply in love, and planned to one day get married to Elizabeth, the love of his life. However, this fairy tale love story would soon be over. On June 19, 1990, Robert drove to the campus gym around 7 p.m. for a workout when he noticed Elizabeth's car. However, she was nowhere to be seen. Assuming that his girlfriend was already making her way to her evening lecture, Robert proceeded to the weight room where he continued to work out until just before 9 p.m. Having not seen Elizabeth all day, Robert went to wait for her outside the lecture hall of her evening class, but she was nowhere to be seen. Confused, Robert left campus and saw that Elizabeth's car was now gone. He drove to her house on Scarborough Ave to see if she was home. Elizabeth's mother informed Robert that Elizabeth had left around 4 p.m. to drive to campus to check out the tennis schedule. At 6:30 a.m. the next morning, Mrs. Bain, worried sick, called Robert to ask if her daughter was with him. Elizabeth Bain never came home. On the afternoon of Friday, June 22, 1990, 3 days after her disappearance, Elizabeth's 1981 Toyota Tercel was found parked across an auto body shop just a kilometer from her home on Morris Road. Fresh blood occupied the backseat in the footwell of her car. This was later to be revealed to be Elizabeth's blood, to which police concluded that she had been murdered. Elizabeth Bain's body was never found. In a matter of minutes, Toronto Police's homicide squad were called in to investigate the crime. Assigned to the case were lead homicide investigators Detective Sergeant Steve Risser and his partner Detective Sergeant Brian Raybould. In only 30 minutes and 48 hours before even meeting Robert, Risser asked for immediate surveillance on Elizabeth's boyfriend, saying, "It is believed Elizabeth Bain was murdered by suspect Robert James Baltovich. The reason? There was no reason at all, other than the fact that he was Elizabeth's boyfriend." From that point on, Risser and Raybould never considered another suspect. Their theory was that Robert was a jealous boyfriend who became murderously angry between 5:40 to 7 p.m. when Elizabeth tried to break up with him. The detectives theorized that Robert used Elizabeth's car to move her remains and then returned her car to the same spot on Morris Road, where witnesses had seen her car since the next morning she was reported missing. Despite not having any concrete evidence to connect Robert to the disappearance of his girlfriend, the detectives zoned in on Robert and spent 5 months pursuing him. On November 19, 1990, Robert was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder and the death of his girlfriend, Elizabeth Bain. With more than 100 witnesses taking the stand, on February 4, 1992, Robert's first trial began in front of Justice John O'Driscoll. With nothing but circumstantial evidence, the Crown painted Robert as the jealous boyfriend who killed Elizabeth due to a belief that if he couldn't have her, then nobody can. Subsequently, the Crown dropped the charges to second-degree murder. The Crown's case relied on the testimony of two key eyewitnesses, Marianne Peirce and David Dibben. Marianne testified that around 5:40 p.m. on the day of Elizabeth's disappearance, she had seen Robert and Elizabeth sitting together at a picnic table on campus. If this was correct, then it is likely that Robert was the killer. However, Robert maintained that he was at home with his family during this time, and some of his family members have confirmed this to be true. Next, David Dibben testified that on June 22, 1990, he had seen Robert driving Elizabeth's car. If David did see Robert in Elizabeth's car where her blood was later found, then it would also seem that Robert was the killer. However, the eyewitness testimony provided by Peirce and Dibben had some serious questions regarding reliability. Despite these questionable features of the Crown's case, the jury found Robert guilty of second-degree murder of Elizabeth Bain on March 31, 1992, based solely on circumstantial evidence. He was sentenced to life in prison with no eligibility for parole for the next 17 years, of which Robert would spend the next 8 years in jail for a crime that he did not commit. Knowing that he did not kill the love of his life, Elizabeth Bain, in May of 1992, Robert Baltovich hired a new attorney to file an appeal. At first, Robert remained hopeful that his stay in prison would be short. However, weeks turned into months and then years, and in the winter of 1999, he began to think that his appeal would never be heard. Feeling depressed and tired of waiting for an appeal that seemed like it would never come, Robert decided to call James Lockyer, lawyer and founder-director of the Association in Defense of the Wrongfully Convicted, now known as Innocence Canada. This decision changed Robert's life forever. In March of 2000, James Lockyer began working on Robert's case, filing reports with the Court of Appeal. Innocence Canada's first mission was to get Robert out of jail. The Court of Appeal agreed that Robert's trial had been unfair. 8 years after being wrongfully convicted in 1992, Robert was let out on bail on March 31, 2000, pending the hearing of his appeal. When looking into Robert's case, Innocence Canada found countless issues with the trial, and on September 20, 2004, the Court of Appeal finally reviewed Robert's case. They were highly critical of Judge O'Driscoll's charge to the jury. The Court of Appeal noted that Robert's trial had been unfair, unbalanced, and contained many legal errors, which compromised Robert's right to a fair trial and ultimately may have affected the verdict. On December 2, 2004, the Ontario Court of Appeal set aside Robert's conviction and ordered a new trial. The court agreed that significant errors had been made in Robert's first trial, however they refused to outright acquit Robert. Instead, they opted for another jury to decide. On April 22, 2008, Robert's retrial occurred. With eyewitness testimony enhanced by hypnosis no longer admissible in court, the Crown's case against Robert had collapsed. With the trial estimated to last 8 weeks, in a matter of minutes, Assistant Crown Attorney Philip Kotanen shocked the courtroom when at the beginning of the retrial he stated that there was no longer any reasonable prospect of conviction and that they would be calling no evidence. The jury returned with a verdict of not guilty, and after 18 years, Robert Baltovich was finally free. Detectives Steve Racer and Brian Raybould had tunnel vision from the start. They rushed their judgment as they disregarded any other possible suspect as Elizabeth's killer, even though there was a rapist known to police in the Scarborough area. In a matter of 30 minutes and without any concrete evidence, they already zeroed in on him as their top suspect and quickly labeled Robert as a jealous lover. To this day, Robert wonders why Racer and Raybould hated him from the beginning. He says, "It was if they decided, we're going to show this hotshot university kid he's not as smart as he thinks he is." In a $13 million lawsuit by Robert on Ontario's Attorney General and police, other police malpractices have also been shown. A Toronto police document has surfaced that raises questions as to why it was not turned over to Robert's lawyer at his initial trial. Notes from a 1990 interview of 2 experts at a forensics unit conducted by Detective Sergeant Brian Raybould indicated that the forensic evidence was not consistent with Elizabeth Bain being killed, her body being hidden, and then transported into a car more than 2 days later. Raybould's notes indicated that he was told Elizabeth's car contained more blood than there should have been from a body that decomposed for 2 or 3 days. The blood smears would have been darker and there was no odor, which was inconsistent with a decomposing body placed inside. The notes were taken on an untitled loose piece of paper and not part of a police memo book. If this evidence was in court, Robert Baltovich would not have been convicted. With Bain's body never being found or any forensic evidence linking Robert to the car, the entire case against him was circumstantial. However, it didn't help Baltovich that this was the first time his defense team had ever argued a murder case before. Baltovich's defense team failed to ensure that they reviewed all the evidence that could have proved their client's innocent. They just relied on the fact that Robert insisted that he was not guilty. The jury came to a verdict of guilty of second-degree murder at Robert's first trial. Despite the jury believing the evidence raised by Marianne Pertz and David Dibben, there were some serious questions regarding the reliability of their testimonies. Eyewitness misidentifications is the most common cause of wrongful convictions. In the beginning, Marianne had a fuzzy recollection of the man she saw with Elizabeth at the picnic table the night she disappeared. However, she later read an article in the Toronto Sun that suggested Robert was a suspect in her disappearance, and a photo of Robert was also included. She also spoke to members of Elizabeth's family who believed that Robert might have harmed her. In an attempt to sharpen her memory, Marianne underwent hypnosis, after which she suddenly recovered much more detailed memories that implicated Robert. After this session, she picked out Robert's picture from a simultaneous photo lineup. The Supreme Court outlines the problems with eyewitness evidence derived from hypnosis. Firstly, there is general consensus that most individuals are more suggestible under hypnosis. Secondly, any increase in accurate memories during hypnosis is also accompanied by an increase in inaccurate memories. Thirdly, hypnosis may compromise the subject's ability to distinguish memory from imagination. And fourth, subjects frequently report being more certain of the content of post-hypnosis memories, regardless of their accuracy. Overall, although hypnosis doesn't always prove unreliable memories, it is still not clear when hypnosis results in a pseudo-memories or how a witness, scientist, or jury member might distinguish between fabricated and accurate memories. Hypnosis also increases the extent to which our memories can change due to outside influences, so that we can end up remembering things that never happened, which can be seen with Marianne viewing the photo of Robert in the article. Further, the police investigating Elizabeth's disappearance used a faulty photo lineup technique when interviewing Marianne Pertz. Marianne was shown simultaneous lineup in which all photos of the suspects are presented at once. This is more problematic than a sequential lineup where the images are presented one at a time. This is because an eyewitness can choose a picture from the array that they feel is the best fit, even if the photos do not match the real perpetrator. In fact, Marianne stated at Robert's trial that she picked out his photo by a process of elimination. David's eyewitness testimony that he'd seen Robert in Elizabeth's car was also problematic. He indicated that he wasn't really paying attention at the time of the alleged sighting, and that he did not have a good view of the driver. His original description of the driver was not very detailed and also was not a good match for Robert's appearance at the time. Initially, he detailed a blonde-haired man. However, his statements changed to a brown-haired man to better match Robert as the police proceedings went forward. According to the Ontario Judicial Council, a judge must be impartial and objective in the discharge of their judicial duties. Judges shall not, by words or conduct, manifest favor, bias, or prejudice towards any party or interest. However, in the case of Robert Baltovich, Justice John O'Driscoll was extremely biased towards the Crown. Instead of informing the jury on their duties in the court of law, Judge O'Driscoll promoted the case of the Crown and belittled the case of the defense. Further, appeal lawyer James Lockyer has also accused O'Driscoll in overwhelming the jury with unfairness and sarcasm by systematically destroying every element of Robert's defense. O'Driscoll dominated the jury with his own opinions and projected an aura of guilt over Baltovich. Early on in the trial, O'Driscoll rejected Robert's alibi in his jury charge and never referred to it again. He also failed to point out the concerns in regards to the eyewitness testimony provided by Crown's key witnesses Marianne Pertz and David Dibben. Then who killed Elizabeth Bain? A common conspiracy is that the real culprit is none other than Scarborough serial killer and rapist Paul Bernardo. Baltovich's defense team argued that there are far too many coincidences. Both Elizabeth Bain and Bernardo attended University of Toronto's Scarborough campus. Bain's disappearance on June 19, 1990, occurred 3 weeks after Bernardo's last known sexual assault. All of Bernardo's rapes during this period occurred within blocks around the campus and her home where Bain was last seen alive. Bernardo also fit the description at Baltovich's first trial of a blonde man seen with Bain the afternoon she had disappeared. Further, Bain's abandoned car was also found with the radio turned on to Bernardo's favorite station, and his favorite brand of Du Maurier cigarettes was found inside the glove compartment of her car. However, Bernardo denies any involvement in the death of Elizabeth Bain. Robert Baltovich spent 8 years in prison for a murder he did not commit. These factors compromised Baltovich's right to have a fair trial in court.